Welcome, Ecom Logistics Nation. We're thrilled to be coming to you live from the heart of Atlanta at Modex 2024, right here at the Georgia World Congress Center. A shout out to our sponsor, G&P Construction, your go-to provider for comprehensive turnkey material handling and solutions in both logistics and commercial needs. We are truly grateful for the support.
I think the 3PLs have also realized the advantage for the downstream customer, right? And they can be the experts in operating the system. They can help you with either financing or the RaaS. They can set up the system. They can operate it for you. You get the economies of scale and the savings based on the automation. And potentially they have multi-clients in a single building. And so the total cost goes down, right? And
welcome, Ecom Logistics Podcast audience. We are excited to be here again at Modex with our friend Marv Cunningham from Prologis Essentials. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah, Marv is a guest that I wanted for a while, but he's been extremely busy.
Captive audience here at Modex.
And the fact that we have got the 30 minutes with him, I am super excited to get going.
I'm very excited to be here.
Thank you.
As a way of getting started, Marv, could you share with the audience a little bit about yourself and your journey and open up for those that aren't familiar with the Essentials program at Prologis?
Yep. So me personally, I always start kind of backwards. Right. I grew up in the middle of nowhere, Montana. Then from there, I went into the Navy. So nuclear power Navy. So did 21 years, always submarines. Claim to fame is 7 years, 6 months, 1 day underwater. Wow. So any day with a window is a spectacular day. Then I left the Navy, went into coal plants for a little bit, and then joined Amazon. Amazon was my jumping point to the supply chain. This was back in 2009, 2010. Okay. So we were doing the Kiva acquisition. We only had 42 distribution centers in the US at the time, and about 18, I believe, in Europe. And so the first year I helped run our facilities engineering, which is just everything in the inside of the building, but the software. Second year, I was asked to go to Europe. And so I picked up a bunch of things. So about 4 US folks moved over to Europe for about 2 to 4 years, depending on which one of us it was, to really help and change that way. So we went into new countries there. So we went into Czech, into Poland. And then I came back and I helped on the operations side. I worked with, the worldwide design team at Amazon, Kiva acquisition, operations, procurement, capacity planning. So a little bit of everything when I was there.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then from there, I went to Target. So, Target, slightly different problem statement. We had about 1,823 stores, 26 distribution centers. How do you do fulfillment from a store? And then how do you keep the low cost on the replenishment down? So those were the two big, I'll say, buckets I did at Target. Then I have an amazing friend. Her name is Jen Hyman. She's co-founder of a company called Rent the Runway. And so I worked there for a year just to help her with her supply chain challenges and learn more about dry cleaning than we ever want to know, right? 250,000 garments a day. It's the world's largest dry cleaning. Saks off Fifth Hudson Bay, chief supply chain officer there. We were private and then we went public. And then we actually split up the 3 companies. I stayed with Saks and then it was XPO initially. So 3PL and last mile. Then we split and I became the chief operating officer, chief information officer for GXO. So world's largest 3PL pure play.
Absolutely.
And now Prologis, 1.2 billion square feet. That's with a B, billion square feet, right? Across multiple countries and over 5,700 warehouses, footprints, and then about 6,700 customers. So everybody knows we're amazing at real estate. What we're trying to do at Prologis Essentials is we're trying to also do anything inside and outside of the building. So anything from racking to fork trucks to full solution automation to network and capacity planning. And really what we're trying to do is add another level to help our customers instead of just giving them the best real estate and the best location. But now we're actually trying to solve their most challenging problems.
Yeah.
And before I forget, I have the most amazing wife. I just shout out to Cami. So she's originally from Romania and she is who and why I am anything. So she's just spectacular.
Anyone that works in warehousing and the amount of travel that we have to do and that work-life balance, we all need amazing wives.
Yes.
I mean, or else you're not making it through in this industry. That is absolutely.
Yeah.
You might actually be the first guest. We've been doing this for a year and a half that did that shout out. So I thank you for doing that.
No, you'll meet her, but she's absolutely amazing.
I look forward to meeting her.
That'd be perfect.
Maybe one of these groundbreaker events or something.
Or come to Arizona. I'll cook you Montana grass-fed beef.
Loving it.
Yeah.
Already. Now, the Target conversation. So you were part of that SFRDC project?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Big step change. Target was really trying to make supply chain actually an integrated part. The stores were so big and there was so much going on in the stores. Initially, supply chains were thought more a support organization.
Yeah.
Arthur Valdez took over as chief supply chain officer. He and I were at Amazon together and we totally changed it. We looked at the value proposition from basically inbound receipt in a DC all the way through point of sale at the store and everything in between. Super challenging, very exciting. Sometime remind me and I'll tell you about the challenges of actually fulfilling e-com out of a store. So you're picking, true story, I was testing the system. I picked a Lego Death Star. Let's say you had ordered it for your son. So I put it in my bucket and I go to pick the next thing. A little 5-year-old runs up to my bucket and steals the Death Star and runs off. Why I use that example is up until that point, I had not designed in the system any way to remove that item after I picked it and put it in the bucket. Because in the warehouse, it's really hard to have a 5-year-old steal your Death Star.
I agree.
In a Target store, not so much.
Yeah,
Right.
I agree. And by the way, I have a parallel story to that on the Target side. 2016, 17 timeframe, both Dan and I were with FedEx. And we were working with Google Shopping. And so Google Shopping's entire philosophy was, right, like, again, it has changed and gone through multiple iterations. But Target was one of their partners from a shopping perspective where you could purchase. And Google is the one that's actually delivering it to your house. The way it was running was Target's got its own systems in the back, right? That's actually managing the store fulfillment.
Yeah.
But then Google, on the other side, had written this code that was on top of the point of sale system to then go enter the retail value that the customer purchased online. And someone was sitting outside with literally a Google credit card purchasing this stuff to do store fulfillment.
Early days.
MacGyver your way out, into doing something of that nature because they were trying to learn as well how to go about doing this. But yeah, it was like, there is fulfillment happening by Target from the stores, but then Google's also doing fulfillment from stores in parallel.
Yeah. And it's so true, right? Like early days, you try all kinds of things just to make it work. And then you learn that when the 5-year-old steals a Death Star, I got to figure out a way. Now I got to deprecate that out of the system.
Inventory accuracy in store is nowhere close to what you find in warehouses, without a question. So for the audience, we have had the fortune of actually looking at Prologis Essentials very closely from a philosophy perspective, from the value that it drives for the customer. I think it's phenomenal. The fact that it's almost a one-stop shop to all your warehousing challenges. So it's no longer just you're dealing with a landlord that's going to give you the keys and give you some TI and walk away. Now you have the opportunity, essentially, could I say end to end on a greenfield?
You could totally say end to end. So not only are we doing, I'll say what the physical supply chain operations in the building, but then we're also doing Prologis mobility. So we're actually doing EV charging, right? So we've charged about 2 million miles for our customers already at some of our sites. On the energy and sustainability side, right, and net carbon zero. So we've committed, we will be net carbon zero by 2040. We've got 500 megawatts of solar power rooftop right now across our building. So we're number 2. Hopefully we'll be number 1 soon.
It's like said it. It's like number 2, but let's move on. That's a pretty big achievement because you would have the most amount of roof in America.
Walmart, they have a lot of stores with a lot of roof on them.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, 1.3 billion square feet, though.
That's a lot of roof.
That's a lot of roof, right?
That's a lot of roof.
And it's just, and then we can help out. You and I were talking last night about automation. Sometimes you need more power. So we're doing front of grid, back of grid off of these solar. And so now, not only are we producing enough power to operate most of these warehouses that we have the rooftop in, where we're giving back to the grid. And so from a power generation side, we're also helping that. So huge give back.
I mean, the fact that the company that's looking for a value, a service that's going, hey, I got these scope 3 requirements to be able to meet my green standards, right? Facing everyone right up front. And I mean, someone like an Essential comes in and kind of helps with that. Be like, don't worry about it. We got it all. Also, while we do that, we put it onto the grid as well as give you the EV charging capabilities for the trucks that are coming in or, your delivery trucks.
And you met Hamid. He's our CEO. I mean, just such a visionary. So people forget most warehouse roofs didn't have a lot on them in the past, right?
Yeah.
And so Hamid actually, through the business, we're funding some roof replacements so that we can put more solar on it. But the payback period for that is very significant, very short. And so imagine your boss coming to you and, hey, we've never done this before. I want to tear off some roofs. I want to put on some new roofs. So we're going to put solar power, and I want to be number 2 very quickly and number 1 after that within 2 years. And that's the kind of leader that I have the pleasure of working with.
That is amazing. And by the way, yes, I've met Hamid, and humble, but visionary would be absolutely the word, because I saw him speak and you can see the conversation. It's not just real estate. Real estate is just this part of it.
100%.
I think it was mind-boggling. Prologis has like the ventures division that's also investing in the right things that align to the core business to enable the clients. I think it's just phenomenally structured from a real estate company standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned end-to-end and we walked through that. It's so cool that we also have the Prologis Ventures team that's actually looking for innovative companies that can solve the problems we have with our customers inside our buildings. And so we very specifically have a mantra where we go after several companies that actually are solving supply chain problems for our teams, our customers, and we're investing in them.
Wow, beautiful.
Yeah. It's when I say Hamid is visionary, the other thing I would tell you is, and it's kind of our tagline, right? It's why not today?
Yeah.
And he pushes that. Why can't we be number 1 on solar? Why can't we, invest in companies that are going to help our customers? Why don't we better support our customers instead of just put them in the footprint? How about we deliver what's in the footprint?
Yeah. This is very different though. Coming from the target world to you move into the GXO world, which is the universe I kind of like, definitely attached to more, right? And then this.
Yeah.
It's much more at a different scale at this point as well for you. Like the having access to 5,700 warehouses, be able to talk to these people, companies that use them, and be able to craft solutions and bring the economies of scale to them.
Yeah. I mean, about a third of our business is 3PLs, third-party logistics, and we very specifically want to help them as best we can. And we very intently listen to our customers, right? We're very customer-centric. And what we want to do is actually, we get the larger 3PLs together. We sit around for about 2.5 days. Hopefully we have fun. But we also talk about what their problems are, their challenges. And then we go back and decide, okay, how can we help them? What can we do to fix? And so maybe later on we'll talk about labor and some other things. But I think those are the types of interactions when you get upstream and you get everybody in the room and they're not competing against each other. They're saying, all of us have this same challenge. How do we solve it?
Love it. And maybe that ties to why you decided to spend some of your time here at Modex. Would love your view on what you've seen so far. What's excited you about the conference?
Yeah, I was trying to think back. I think the first one I came, I'll screw this up, either 12 or 13. I can't remember.
Okay.
Right. And then I've been coming for a long time ever since. Right. There was very few robotics, lots of fork trucks, lots of racking.
Right.
And now, we have 2 whole halls now. The bigger halls are actually automation and robotics. So just a massive step change in that. And then I think while it might not be a specific thing or a company this year, what's super interesting to me is everybody now is working either with AI, machine learning. And so instead of just giving you a solution, they're giving you a solution that then starts thinking about how did we do today and what can I make a recommendation? So I was with a cobot provider today. One of the things that they're doing is they're using their software and because they're using it to pick with, then they can start to evaluate the SKU mix that you have. And they're giving feedback to the customer on you should put your SKUs in different locations. We call it slotting, but it's happening in real time. And it's a direct feedback to the local operations manager in real time. And I just think those are the types of things that are super exciting.
That is so cool, right? Like the fact now, I think there is normalization, at least on the robotics side now that we have started seeing in the market. You see them all over the place. They are inside the warehouses. Almost any warehouse I walk through, you're going to find a couple robots in play at least, either as a pilot or they have gone full-fledged. I also see a lot of people ripping them out and putting them back in. Robotics as a service, that entire idea has made it so accessible to the general market, right? This is not like heavy capital investment, fixed infrastructure type of stuff. This is like, what is it? $10,000, $15,000 a month, and you can get it going. I mean, and it's like, hey, this is not working. 6 months later, be like, take it off, right?
Yeah. I think I'll go back to Prologis, right? We use third-party lending. Depending on the customer, we can also help fund that either with an operational or a finance lease. I think that's a big differentiation. The ease of use of these systems. It used to be you had to have an incredible amount of technical skill to operate.
Yeah.
I'll give you a true story. We were pitching cobots to a company. Their CFO was with us. And so I took her to a site that we had the cobots in. And I said, one of the biggest challenges is, how long it does it take to train somebody, how challenging it is in a 1 million square foot warehouse. Like people don't even know where the restroom or lunchroom is,
right?
Let alone where has been, C029567.
Agreed.
And so she hit rate in the first 20 minutes. So I can tell you from my Amazon days, we used to spend a lot of time on training, and we had a 3-week, what we called the learning curve. And at the end of 3 weeks, you had to hit your rate, right? So 3 weeks or 20 minutes. That's incredibly different.
That is. And I think earlier today, we also had SVT Robotics, which I know you have a great relationship with.
AK is amazing.
And I mean, the philosophy behind all of that, right? It is that technical simplification. These things, we were one of the first ones to pick it up. And we had to do it with Manhattan WMS at that time. And I think it was upwards of about $300,000 that we had to spend to actually enable that. But that's back in the days. That's no longer the case anymore. It's become more plug and play. Systems are ready to be able to do that. Companies like SVT now have partnership with these companies and say, I'm going to come in and make your life easy. You don't need to spend all of that money up front. And oh, by the way, it's not just low cost. If at the same time you want to integrate into a slam line or a pack size machine or something of that nature, we can do it all. I think there is way more to come, but they are maturing. And to your point, ML, AI, add that on top.
And I think the ease and then the feedback mechanism. So I've known AK for a long time in SVT Robotics.
Yeah.
He and I used to be on these ridiculous calls. You got 5 different vendors. You're trying to figure out who's at fault, who broke it, right? And all you have is a bunch of error codes, but you don't know how to fix it.
Yeah.
And I think AK was so excited yesterday. He showed me a site real time. He was actually in the building. Everything was working fine. And he gets back to the airport and he realizes there was an error code that his customer service team fixed. But the delta is the amount of information and data and how simplistic it is now. So all 4 vendors, there was a challenge. In the old days, you get the error code, you get everybody on a call, you try to fix it.
And everyone's
everybody,
like
that is so true, right? Well, they never said it was their fault.
Right.
But literally they fixed it in real time. And the amount of information and data they had for the error code was just incredible. And he was like, hey, remember those? And I mean, back in the day, we would be on calls, maybe 6-7 hours sometimes, right? Trying to solve a big problem. This could have been a big problem because it would have taken a really long time for the teams to identify it.
Yeah.
The way he set it up, they figured it out. They made 2 phone calls. It was fixed, I think, in less than 2 minutes.
That is beautiful.
Yeah. And basically it wasn't 100% automated, right? There's still a local team behind it, but all the information very quickly tells you, this is what you need to do to fix it. This is what's really causing the problem.
I love that. I think the evolution on the robotics side in general has been phenomenal. And maybe that leads into another question of when is the right time? Because I'm guessing you get into a lot of these sites, right? Where the question becomes, when is the right time that I should be adopting robotics? You get out of your 5,700 warehouses, I would assume only a small % have robots. And a lot of companies are looking at them. Well, what is that starting point? You would say, hey, I think you should start evaluating because it's a question. What we still don't have maturity around is the solution engineering organizations that are necessary out in the market that can actually tell you those robotics evaluation. A lot of people talk about it and people are aligned to certain robotics, but there is not that right answer of general evaluation.
That's such a loaded question, right? Yeah. I think Gartner put out 2 years ago that less than 7% of all warehouses in the US have automation. Labor is a significant 100%. Cost in the warehouse. It's harder and harder to find people.
Yep.
And it's harder and harder based on your volumes to have a consistent schedule for them. And so the first thing that I would say is if you're having a labor challenge, and that's somewhat facetious because I think everybody's having labor challenges,
sure.
Right? I think you should start looking at potential automation. The second piece that I would say, and we talked about it, oftentimes when you talk to a customer, they all know somebody 10 years ago that tried to put in automation. It was this horror story.
Yep.
Right? Oh my gosh, we were supposed to launch it 10 months later and we never hit rate and blah. Like everybody has that story. I think what you're seeing now is because we've gotten so much smarter and more sophisticated in the simplicity of the systems, it's a totally different installation problem, right?
Agreed.
And so I think one, I'd take that off the table. You have to do your due diligence.
Great.
Right? But If you have a labor problem, if you're growing, and then if you really believe that you're trying to either process units faster or in a shorter period of time with less shifts, both of those is the right time for automation. And you mentioned it earlier, like we have RaaS now. You can do an operating lease. You can do a financial lease. There are so many different avenues than, oh my gosh, we've got to somehow come up with $10 million of capital.
Exactly.
And I think that's the other beauty of where we're at today.
And what's even interesting is the fact it's not just the AMRs that are RaaS. You now have goods to person capabilities that are RaaS. That's pretty freaking amazing. My storage solution in a RaaS environment.
Yes.
You had to go to the big boys, and you don't talk AutoStore Exotech unless you're talking at least 5 million as a starting point, even in their smallest kind of installs, right? You're not going to get that level of density, but you're going to get that improvement in getting into a GTP type solution that is RaaS. Yeah. And I'm seeing a lot more of those this year now than there were in the previous years.
Yeah, I think you're starting to see a true partnership between automation and supply chain. And I'll talk about 3PLs, but it could be anybody, right? Yeah. I think the 3PLs have also realized the advantage for the downstream customer. They can be the experts in operating the system. They can help you with either financing or the RaaS. They can set up the system. They can operate it for you. You get the economies of scale and the savings based in the automation. And potentially they have multi-clients in a single building. And so the total cost goes down. And I really believe you're going to see more and more of that as this continues to grow in the phase that we're in.
That's such an interesting point, by the way. Historically, the way I have seen in the past is large footprint implementations. The only way a 3PL would move on that capital investment is if the customer was bringing the money to the table to actually do it, right? Or there was pain share, gain share that was actually in play. Over the last few years, the trend has changed where there is a level of comfort by saying, hey, I'm going to act like the bank. I will put in a big capital investment into it, right? But I need an 8-year, 10-year term because I cannot cover my nut if I was to do it within a 5 year. And the level of comfort that clients now have in accepting that, you are seeing a dynamic shift happening in the market, specifically the large footprints and to the multi-tenant environment.
Yeah. So Essentials is always working with our customers. We just closed a deal, very large customer, Fortune 500. It started out, they wanted a very short-term lease. And then Essentials got involved, presented a bunch of things. And then we started talking about, how do you want to afford this? What's the best way for you? The customer now, literally almost a 40% reduction on a variable cost per unit. We on the Prologis side got a 10-year lease with the customer. And then we help them, facilitate the financing for the equipment. And then we also phased it in.
Beautiful.
And so on all three sides, it was a win. And I think that's a fundamental difference that Prologis can bring to the table that most other companies can't.
Beautiful.
Love it. You have a lot of clients, I'm sure, that only have a single facility.
Yeah.
And, maybe we're out of the pandemic surge, but we're still seeing strong growth, whether you're a 3PL or you're a brand or retailer yourself. And I think we just talked about maybe some of what the answer is, but a lot of difficulty exists in trying to replicate. Say you've mastered operational excellence in facility 1, and now you're expanding to the West Coast or East Coast or Midwest and replicating that. So we're not talking about a campus environment where GM could drive 10 minutes and get to the next facility, but maybe you're going across the country.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And any tips or thoughts or wisdom or advice, or maybe how you're seeing what we just talked about, which is that robotics automation play into how can you take and lift and shift that to truncate the learning curve?
Yeah, I'm going to go back to Amazon initially, and then I'll kind of move forward. So the first thing that I did when I left the Navy, and I swear this will tie out, is I had to convert what we were doing in the Navy. How do I speak to civilians and what I was capable of and what we were doing, right? And how could I make it simplistic? I'm a big believer on if you really understand something, you can make it in a very simplistic way to discuss, right? So I came up with this, and it's not magic. There's no magic. It's Marv's 4 Ps. It's people, process, performance, and price.
Yep.
Always start with people, right? The process we're going to talk about here in a second, right? The performance is how you operate. And once again, very simply, have a plan, know the plan, nail the plan. If you actually followed a lot of our Fortune 500 companies and you said, okay, what was your plan? 2 months in, are they actually following the plan? And then do they nail the plan? It sounds simplistic. And I'm going to give Amazon credit. A very amazing individual named Dave Clark. So I started 2010. You go back and look where we were at in 2010 and then massive growth through 2016 when I left. And so when I said today was the easiest day of your life, it's because tomorrow gets harder because of the scale that is going to happen. Right. And so when you talk about differences, we had a very strong push there. And it's 3 words. We wanted to standardize, we wanted to build stability, and then we wanted it to be scalable. Right. And then I think to your point, they don't understand the inefficiencies if you start to grow and each general manager is running their plant differently.
Yeah.
Correct.
Because then it doesn't work, right? Like you need to be able to share the best practices. You implement those best practices, but you want a standardized process, right? That is repeatable and scalable.
I agree. I mean, I wouldn't name companies, but in the past I've seen where it almost turns into, if you don't have that level of consistency, and it's a 3PL environment, right? Like it just turns into like as if it's a franchise model. And like everyone kind of runs it the way they want. Every site has its own way of doing things. And now we have processes and systems that have gone completely on their own.
Yeah.
It's a challenge. I don't think a lot of people take that into consideration of like what it actually takes to drive that level of leadership. If you are a leader that moves from, okay, I ran a site to a region, let's call it, and then looking at it from a national perspective, what it takes to have that, in the past, we used to call it the operating system that essentially says everything will run in a level of consistency, but with its, of course, you got to take the nuances of flexibility into play, right?
100%. Right. I think, but if it's a standardized process that you're building that will be repeatable and scalable, then when you have to adjust, and you will have to adjust,
right.
Yep. I swear to you, I don't believe I've ever done anything perfectly. Everything I've ever done, I think I could have done better, right? Anything. And I think as long as you go in with that mindset, you can do that. And I would just highlight, you mentioned culture. I think people totally underestimate culture. Prologis is, Hamid pushes culture, right? Like he pushes that we should always think about the customer first. And I would tell you unequivocally, that's what we do. And I'll give you an example of culture. You and I have children.
Yeah.
We, in theory, drive the same culture in our family. How do your kids receive that culture?
Right.
Like sometimes they're very different. Sometimes they're aligned. And then somebody has to come in and say, no, this is the culture of our family. This is how we're going to do it. And I think it's a simple reminder of how hard it can be, because you spend time with your family. They're your children. Sometimes they should listen to you. and even in your family, your culture of your family is very difficult to maintain. So now pick an organization that's got 100,000 people in it.
I agree. My organization's, or our organization's about 100-ish people at this point. And the geographic differences, the Canadian culture of resources looks very different than our resources in India to the folks that we have in the US that are all remote. To build a culture, right? It is extremely hard, even at that level. Like, and there is a lot of control that we can put in place. What is our purpose? Why are we doing what we are doing? It is hard. It
totally
is
hard.
Extremely hard.
Yeah.
And there is no playbook for this. That if you're building a business, Marv, there is truly no playbook for when you encounter these things. You can read about it as much as you want. It's when it hits you in the face for the first time.
Yeah.
You just have to figure out how to do it. And to that point, right? Like in that multi-site environment, having that level of culture of who we are, the purpose of what you are doing, and then making sure that they are aware and that leadership truly believes and actually takes it down. I mean, I come from FedEx and we used to call it People Service Profit, PSP. And we truly lived it. Our leadership lived it.
Like Hamid and then Dan Letter's our president, right? Even when you go into investment committee to try to do something, the very first question that always gets asked is, how are we better servicing our customers with this? So we don't start with the financials. It's how are we better serving our customer base with what we're doing?
As we bring another episode to a close here at Modex, we want to extend our gratitude to GNP Construction for their sponsorship of the podcast. If you're in need of top-notch, all-inclusive material handling solutions for logistics and commercial real estate, look no further than GNP Construction. Be sure to visit GANDPconstruction.com to discover your one-stop shop for for turnkey MHE integrations.
Hi, I'm Ninad Acharya, CEO and co-founder of Fulfillment IQ, and I'm here with
Dan Call, CRO and partner at Fulfillment IQ. We're the team behind the eCom Logistics podcast. Our mission is to provide you with genuine insights from our work alongside logistics leaders to help you improve your supply chain.
In the eCom Logistics podcast, we share the knowledge and the insights we've gained from working alongside amazing brands, retailers, 3PLs, and VCs, so you can make the most out of your supply chain journey.
If you like what you're hearing, we'd truly appreciate your support with a 5-star rating on your favorite podcasting channel. Your feedback not only keeps us going, but also helps others find the podcast. If you think Fulfillment IQ can assist you, or if you have an idea related to logistics, just reach out to us on LinkedIn. We're always up for a chat and ready to explore new possibilities together.
Stay tuned to the eCom Logistics podcast on your favorite podcast platform for fresh and practical insights into e-commerce and logistics. Until next time, let's keep making a difference.